confess here, Cameron did not double check my work. And so we may or may not be live on the right platforms at this point in time. Uh, Cameron is the stream maven. Is that what we're going to call it? Stream maven?
I'll take that.
I don't know. Feels right. Feels right to me. How are you this Friday, Cameron?
Doing well. I just finished a workshop, and with a bunch of the engineering students here on campus, and I think landed well. Good engagement, which I was excited. So,
well, that's awesome.
How about you?
Just rocking and rolling, doing my thing, as one does. Had some meetings this morning, but I am feeling ready to dive in to the questions that we got, and we have 4 of them. Boop 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 boop. 4 questions for us to chuck at our meat processors to see if we can.
Is that our brains?
Yeah, in our brain, the meat processor in our brain box.
Fair enough. I thought it was just a black box. We didn't know what actually goes on in there.
Well, it's a black box to everyone else because just judging by the facial expressions that we get at our live events, I'm not sure people know what's going on up in here.
No, I agree.
And you know what? That's part of the strategy. It's part of the mystery. You got to keep the relationship spicy and alive and mysterious. So that's what we're doing here. Of course, this is our weekly office hours, live every single Friday at noon Pacific on the YouTube and on the LinkedIn for your questions. Whatever you got. And you can submit questions in advance at jdm.bio. I think it's this little calendar icon. You can click that, fill out the thing. There's also a link to these events. We try to keep those links current. If we don't, you can always find them on my YouTube page, which is easily linked there, or on the Traction Lab LinkedIn page where we stream this there. But you can also ask your question in advance. We do prioritize the live questions, and we love you guys. Always got some awesome questions. So looking forward to reading those. I see we've got some friends joining us. Hello to Phil. Happy Friday indeed. Whenever you got one, drop it in the chat. Happy to answer it. But we did get 4 submitted in advance. I think we'll start with this rather general one here. It's pretty it was kind of a vague question, I think would be the right way to say it, but I'll go ahead and read it out here. So this is a B2B SaaS for 8 different customer types. They didn't list them, they just said 8 different customer types, and they are at the idea or pre-product stage. And their question is there a practical strategy for hypothesis testing when one can't yet rule out any of the 8 different potential customer types, one at a time, all at once, whatever? And they said that their customer types would vary in their customer types would differ in variations of the product they are hypothesized to want, if they wanted it at all, of course. Great acknowledging that at the end there. I like that. Cameron, what's your thought? 30,000-foot view. How do you got 8 customer types, idea stage. How do you narrow that down?
It's great. Thank you for the question ahead of time. So I think where I would start was like, one, you have to start to have some sort of assumption or hypothesis around what is the customer base that you think has the most urgent and severe pain point. So I would start to kind of map that assumption out and then try to see how we can find those people to have a conversation to see if that's actually something that they actually truly have, and are they self-reporting that problem to be something both urgent and severe. And so, I think it certainly requires some customer discovery, but I think the missing part of what I'm hearing in terms of the 8 different potential customer types is like, what problem are you trying to potentially solve for them? There's got to be some sort of theory, or are you just like wanting to have like conversations with these different 8 people, and then seeing what problems come up from there. But I think you got to start with some sort of hypothesis of like, this is the group of people that I think has this urgent and severe pain point. Let me see if I can get in front of them and validate that problem actually exists and is also urgent and severe through them self-reporting that through conversations. So that would be one. And then I think the last thing I might, I don't know if it's too early for them to, like, I don't know that they necessarily need to build a persona per se, but I think thinking through like a little bit more nuance on who the customer is, like I'm taking this as an assumption, but they're like maybe very focused on the demographic component of like, here's these 8 different potential customer types that are look this way from a demographic standpoint, versus it being like, here's the behavior and the pain point that we're ultimately trying to solve for. I think will help narrow down who maybe you should start talking to first.
Awesome. Yeah, I couldn't agree more with all of that. I think I have 2 things that I want to say. One is to, I think, poke a little bit at what I'm hearing is an assumption here. And it comes from a couple of different places. So one is the wording here: customer types would differ in variations of the product that they hypothesized to want. And then another one was, we have all these different customer types and we can't yet, rule out which customer type we want. Both of these things are leading me to believe that we're starting with a solution and not a problem. That we have this idea for a product that we think we could offer, and we think it might be worth while to 8 people or to 8 different customer types. And so how do we start testing which one of them wants the product? And I actually think that's sort of jumping the gun a little bit here. We want to reverse engineer like, what is the problem that we're actually solving, and so take the solution out of it for a second and then see who experiences this problem with sufficient severity and urgency that we think that will turn them into a willing buyer. That should help narrow down the 8 customer types a little bit, at least as an internal exercise. And if it does not, I think then we just don't know enough yet about, like, we have an idea for something we think is cool, but we don't yet know enough about the problem space to really identify even what the product actually should be yet. And so this is where I couldn't agree more, Cameron, with your recommendation on this. Like, you're gonna have to go talk to customers, and if it's talking to 8, it's talking to all 8. But we need to step way back into the problem side and not be focused on the product or the solution, because it doesn't matter yet until you have a specific, well-identified customer with a severe and urgent problem who wants a solution, is willing to dedicate time, money, energy, and other resources into the solution. Then the product itself doesn't matter, and we actually can't even define it yet. So that would be, I may be reading a bit too much in between the lines, but I got 2 different signals in just these few sentences that maybe we were thinking about this from who wants my solution. And so I would encourage you to step back, have the thought of who has a problem it's severe and urgent that I can solve, and then have conversations with those people to see if we can surface them. And we can put some customer discovery resources into the chat. But if you go to tractionthinking.substack.com, which is our the Traction Labs Substack, free Substack there, and just type into the search something like customer discovery or customer interviews, I think you're going to get a whole block of good resources to help you out there. But we'll try to put those maybe into the comments on LinkedIn and YouTube a little bit later, or into the YouTube description. We'll put them into the LinkedIn comments later. All right. Yeah.
Cool.
All right. So two things before we go on to our next question. If you've got a question you want us to answer live, drop it into the chat. We are always going to prioritize the live questions, but it's always nice to have the ones submitted in advance too. And sometimes you need a little bit more space that you can get in a YouTube comment or in a LinkedIn comment. So feel free to go to jdm.bio, fill out the form there, and ask a little bit more of a robust question. The second thing is that we're looking, Cameron and I have been having conversations over the last few weeks about how we can take this office hours format and really double down on things that are going to be most helpful to you guys, and how we can, maximize value. And so we're exploring a lot of different things in the format here. We're having fun. Love your guys' questions. We'd keep going with this, but we're always looking for like, what's one click better, right? You do the 1% better every day, and after a year, it's that big exponential curve, that like hyperbolic curve. So so we're after that. One of the things that that I was personally curious about would be whether you guys would be interested in we don't know with what frequency, but having somebody, one of you out there, so to speak, in the hot seat. Maybe you have a question or something you want to talk through, or it might not even be a specific question, but you really just want to get some time with the brains behind the Traction Lab. And so we bring you on camera here, and we would have a conversation for some part of office hours. I don't know if that would be, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or the full hour. We're still kind of noodling on that. But if you'd be interested in hopping into the hot seat on camera here as part of office hours, then let us know. If that's one of our questions, is this something that enough of you would be interested in, that we could make that into like some type of recurring segment, even if it wasn't weekly, monthly, whatever. But we want to know. And if there's some other idea that you guys have for how we can make office hours more valuable to you, let us know. Drop in the comments. We'd like to. All right. Anything you want to add to that, Cameron?
No, I think let's get to the next question, but appreciate it.
All right. Well, we only have 3 more, so I'm not going to bother rolling the die here, but I will show as evidence that they are always here. But Cameron, why don't you set us up? Pick whichever one you like and set us up.
I'll just go with number 3, just for whatever reason. So we got Target. This is a B2B SaaS. Their target customer are solopreneurs and consultants who sell digital products or courses. Their stage is paid pilots. So here's the thing. Our course hosting platform is genuinely better than Teachable or Kajabi. In terms of features and price, $49 versus their $149 plus. We have 19 people paying for pilots and they're happy. But when we talk to new prospects, they already have their entire business built on one of the big platforms, and switching sounds like a nightmare to them. You compete with the incumbents when switching costs are mostly psychological. And some additional content here is migration is actually pretty straightforward. We can import their courses, students, everything in just about 2 hours. But people hear migration and immediately panic about breaking something or losing data. They know they're overpaying, but the devil they know feels safer.
I like this one. And I like any question that begins with "here's the thing." So kudos for throwing us a little style in your question there. All right, so I have some familiarity with this space. I know Teachable, I know Kajabi, I know Circle, I know all the competitors in that space. The 19 people think we're paying for pilots and they're happy. That's awesome. Imagine these are people that you mostly caught before they had their business set up on one of the competing platforms. And I think one of the things to keep in mind is that they've spent a lot of time getting this set up, and their business, their livelihood is on here. And if they're doing something on Kajabi, they might have something a bit more robust than just a series of videos and customers, and they might, and if they're certainly on something like Circle, then they have like a community component built in as well, which you get a little bit in Teachable or a little bit in Kajabi, depending on how much work you do. But all of that setup was a lot of manual work. So yeah, there is a psychological component here that no matter how easy you make it, they remember what it was like the first time. And everybody's saying that it's easy. Everybody always says it's easy to switch, even if it never is. However, and this is a big however, I actually am not sure that we can be confident here that the switching cost is purely psychological. And I think that's worthy of more exploration than I think that you're giving it here. So there is a psychological component. I'm not going to deny that there's not. But for example, you mentioned in the like anything else question, migration is actually pretty straightforward. We can import their courses, students, everything in like 2 hours, but people hear migration and immediately panic about something breaking or losing data, and then blah, 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 blah. So a couple of things. So one is 2 hours doesn't feel super fast. And I don't know if that's you doing it in 2 hours. And so like, they don't have to do anything at all. But like, if it's them doing work for 2 hours, like that's not nothing. And these are people who are maybe busy, like trying to run these courses, because a lot of these people are running side hustles for these things. It's nights and weekends time, and 2 hours is a lot of nights and weekend time that they could be spending making money, or posting social content to get them more customers. The second thing is that Migration, I don't like. There's a data migration component, which is like, can we import their courses, import their students, and get all that kind of set up? And the second thing is, what is the impact on their customers? So they're going to have to message to everybody that they're switching platforms. As somebody who has been a member of more than one community or more than one course where platforms were switched midstream, that is like, it's a thing. There's messaging that goes, like, it's a process, and you can potentially take a really big engagement hit because not only are things different, but it's just different URLs, different things to be able to go to. So there's just a different component here. Are URLs even going to map forward? There's a lot to consider here that's just beyond, is the data the same in both platforms? And so I think that there's, this is where I want to say, like, I think there's something much deeper here than just a psychological switching cost. I think that there's actually some real switching costs here that we might not have, might really not have surfaced well yet. And so I just kind of wanted to call out. I think there's a lot more here, but I do want to say one last thing, and I know, I apologize, I've been rambling for a little bit, Cameron. I mean, hopefully I'm not using up all the oxygen here. But you like, the question of how do you compete with incumbents when the switching costs are mostly psychological? Well, they're all out there competing already anyway. So like, and there's new ones cropping up all the time, and you're able to get, 19 paying pilots on this thing. And so people are setting up new stuff all the time. And so just because you can't get people to switch immediately doesn't mean that it has to be today's problem, particularly if you can identify a niche of underserved creators that you can get to create courses on your platform instead of creating them on another platform, right? So they're not actually switching. They're just deciding at the get-go to go with you as opposed to somebody else. Then that might work really well. Kajabi made that play in their early days, and it worked well for them. Teachable did something similar as well. They had pretty tight niches at the outset. And then you can worry about how you take on the incumbents and switching costs and everything else later. So I'm not saying that that's the right approach. I just wanted to offer that just because you may not be able to immediately compete with the switching costs, it doesn't mean in this case that you're out of it, because there's always new entrants into the creator space who are looking to set up courses. So what do you think, Cameron?
I don't have a ton to add. There's not enough oxygen. I'm just kidding. I was going to play on your taking up all the oxygen, but no, I don't think there's anything more to add. I wanted to maybe pivot since Phil is here still and had a question. He has to bounce at 12:30. So if you're cool, I felt like we sufficiently tackled that one. So I can maybe kick us off and see where we go. So Phil's spent the last 3 weeks building the MVP of a B2B DevOps SaaS product and now rolling it out to 3 companies for beta testing. I'm confident it will provide value as is, but I know the real gold is in the next set of functionality. I'd probably need another month of dedicated time to build it out. Is there a typical next step to find very small early funding for build time? Maybe I can kick it and see where you go. So I think the first thing for me is as you're going into these beta testing, is it purely to test the feasibility, or is there an intent to pay is where I would focus on? So is this set up as a pilot, and is there an intent to pay after delivering some sort of value? So when we think about providing value as is, when we think of an MVP, there's the viable component of the MVP, right? And so are you able to capture value back based on you delivering this value to these early customers that you're targeting? So that would be the first kind of focus area for me, was like, how can you get intent behind their willingness to pay and actually see if there can be a transaction before you go spend more time building things when we're not sure that there's truly a willingness to pay for some of those components of there. If there is the willingness to pay and they said, hey, in order for us to double down for that next kind of set, that, that might be something that you could then ultimately go do. Some of the ideas around potential funding is not immediately, but there are various competitions that you can plug into, which would be maybe some form of non-dilutive capital to help you in that portion of things. And then lastly is, it sounds like, if there's an ability to access friends and family, might be that type of round of capital. But again, they're mainly going to be looking at not necessarily much of your ability to build the thing, but more so, is there truly demand, because that's what's going to return the capital at some point, whether that's something that's more immediate or a long-term investment where they're on the cap table. So that would be my initial thought process. What about you, JDM?
Yeah. So while you were doing that, I dropped into the LinkedIn comments. I'm going to put it in the YouTube in a second, but since Phil was asking the question from LinkedIn, I did that one first. But a link to our inaugural edition of our weekly newsletter. It's a new newsletter. So we have our the Traction Lab Substack. We've got a weekly deep dive that goes like really deep into a particular topic. It's 1,500 to 2,000 words. It's long. Our new email that we're still toying with the day. This week it went out on Wednesday, but we might move it to Monday. But anyway, is much shorter. It's 250 words, super tight. That's just like, here's one anti-pattern and here's how to fix it. So it's just like what we're seeing in the ecosystem. Anyway, this week's issue of what we call the pivot was on the pilot anti-pattern, which is that idea of testing for feasibility as opposed to testing for desirability. And so I know Cameron mentioned that. I'm not going to go in any more detail on that, but you can check that out and read a little bit more on that. There's also on one of the deep dives from a few months ago on how to do pilots really well and how to define pilots structurally really well to get some of that data back. So you can check that out if you want the deeper dive as well. But just wanted to share that a little bit of content. Just happened to be timely. Just came out 2 days ago. So cool. So a couple of thoughts on this. So one, you said you spent 3 weeks building an MVP, and now there's like you need another month to build it out. Like, to me, that's negligible, right? Like, you already spent 3 weeks. What's 4 more? Is kind of what I'm thinking about it. Like, I don't think that you should jump straight into building without strong evidence of desirability, even if it only takes another 4 weeks. But that's the way I'm going to think about it when you start asking about that level of time. And so then when you start to pivot, is there like some early funding for build time? I think the answer is going to be no, because anybody's going to say, you spent 3 weeks on it, spend 4 more. What the fuck do I care? Right? Like, it's not a big enough lift where it makes sense to inject any capital in something like that. At least from my perspective. If you have a good relationship with an angel, then maybe they could do something like that with strong evidence, but it's not going to be the norm. So I think the answer largely to that question is no. I think is kind of how I think about it. The other thing I would say is like, I would really want to make sure that you're again leaning into like really strong evidence of desirability. So how much fact, meaning how much evidence do we have in the idea that we can get more conversions or higher dollar conversions, whichever the case is, for this next block of features than we can get now? So if that's just an assumption, then please don't build anything. Like, let's go get some validation before we kind of jump down that road. But if you do have some robust evidence that that is the case, then it might be worth it. But then I'd say like, well, that robust evidence should probably take the form of having some of those conversions up front, LOIs, pilot agreements, or pre-sales or something like that, so that you can actually cover that. But in the end, 3 weeks versus 4 more, like, I'm just going to kind of go, eh. Meh. I mean, like, it just doesn't sound like a lot. Like, even though, like, I mean, I get it. Like, I mean, it would be very difficult for me to like take 7 weeks off from working. Like I get that. I'm not saying that, but like from an outside funding perspective, I just don't see that being a factor for anybody.
Right. Cool. So if I know he's got to hop off, but if you're have a quick follow-up or something you wanted us to tackle that we brought up in that, feel free to throw it back in the chat. I did drop in to the chat the link to the pivot, which JDM had mentioned. So feel free to tackle that.
I had put that in the chat as well. So it's in there twice now.
It didn't come through on mine.
Oh, I did it directly from LinkedIn, and I tagged Phil in it, but who knows?
Well, who knows? Restream sometimes, falters, I guess, but nonetheless, cool. Yeah. Shall we go to number? Oh, yeah, you did have it in there. Sorry.
Let's do it.
All right, to number 2, huh? Sound good?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So this is another B2B SaaS. They are targeting HVAC contractors serving residential customers. In terms of stage, they're less than 100K ARR, and specifically From a traction standpoint, they're at 67K ARR. So that's 75 contractors using their dispatch and invoicing software. The problem is every contractor customizes their invoice templates, service agreements, pricing structures, everything. They all want it in their way. Do we just accept that this market needs infinite customization, or is there a way to standardize without losing customers? So some additional content is some charge flat rates, others charge by the hour. Some do maintenance contracts, some don't. Some want to include photos and invoices. Others want detailed parts lists. We're drowning in feature requests that only apply to 2 to 3 customers each. Ooh, tough. So do you want to start, or do you want
to? Sure. Okay, a couple things. So the first thing is that feature requests that are 2 to 3 out of the 75 contractors are feature requests that you don't do. Just gonna throw that out there. They're definitely not at the top of your list. Unless it's the 2 to 3 customers that are giving you like some disproportionate share of the revenue. Like that might be a thing. If it was 2 to 3 customers that are responsible for 60 of the 67K ARR, then that, like, okay, that might be a different story. But assuming that it's 67K divided by 75, and that's how we get to the total, then 2 to 3 doesn't matter. So like there's that. The other thing is like the broader problem of that is that people want to do things differently. And what I want to kind of tease out is the difference between them wanting some minor customization with different output. So like we want to be able to set up a, some type of maintenance agreement. We want to do some ad hoc. We want to bill by the hour. Like those are a few, you can put together a pricing calculator that does something like that. That's not a complicated set of features to do. But if it's just like, okay, we just need to give them the ability to do some pricing and they're going to have to, do a little upfront work to set up what that looks like. Okay, fine. And then if they want like some dramatically different output on what invoices look like or something like that, then that might be something that we can work with as well, for a simplified feature. But if they're truly looking for different workflows or something where they're actually just fundamentally doing something different from the next contractor, then that's where we have to like, kind of tap the brakes and say, like, what is the problem that we're actually solving here? And that's my question back to you, anonymous questioner, because we don't ask for names. But the what are they paying for? The 67 grand in ARR that you have across these 75 contractors, what are they actually paying for? I know you said dispatch and invoicing software, but it also says they're all doing everything different. They all have these feature requests. And so did they sign up thinking that they would get those things and they're not? Or did they sign up and it's solving a problem and now they want more, right? You give a mouse a cookie. Or did they sign up, get what they thought that they were going to get? It's not really right for them. And now they're like, maybe give me some more, like maybe if you get these more features, then I'll buy, right? Like there's a number of different ways to interpret what you wrote. And I'm kind of curious about that. And the first question is, who is it and what did they buy?
Yeah, I think what was the promise of the value you're positioning to them, and is it something that you're already hitting and they want additional components of it? Also would be curious, it seems like, is there a set of those customers that are proportionally like larger customers? Because I'm not sure what the average contract value is. So it seems like might be, I don't know if it's the same pricing across all of that, or if you did have customization or something, that there was, one that has more offering than the other. So that's just something. But I think going back to what is the like urgent, severe problem that you're solving for them, and what was the promise that you were delivering? And then I would also be curious as to like churn, like were they churning because of a certain feature set, or was it something related to something totally different, them not being the right customer? Potentially could be that as well, and that's totally fine. We want to define, kind of that negative space of like who our initial customers are and how we want to capture as many of them as possible before we go and like build this very robust offering. We want to, pinpoint who that is.
Absolutely. And so I just put into the chat. So Cameron kind of alluded to this idea when we're talking about like promise. I kind of alluded to it as well, is that we have this little framework that we use called the 3 Ps of churn. So this is assuming that your customers are leaving, and that's not necessarily fair, but the concept behind it will work either way. And so the idea is that when you're in an early stage startup and you get users onboarded and then they start to churn, most people jump straight to product being the reason why. Like, how can we improve the product, add more features, improve the onboarding process, streamline the UX? They start focusing on how do we keep users by emphasizing the product, and because that makes sense, right? Most of us churn because the product isn't right. But the problem in an early stage startup is that that's usually like the least relevant and impactful lever to pull is the product one. And so we have 3 Ps, and product is the 3rd P. The first 2 are people and promise. I know we talked about this a lot, and I dropped in a link to an article that we wrote a month or 2 ago on this. But the idea is that most of the time the churn was because you had the wrong customers in the first place. And so they didn't have the problem with sufficient severity and urgency to keep going through. And so they eventually churned away. The second reason might be a promise one, where they didn't get what they thought that they were going to get. And that's another, we could fix that either on the promise, on the people, or on the product side, but it's a different reason than just the wrong people or the wrong product. But it is kind of like there's a Venn diagram there that intersects those 3 things as well. So I would take that step back and say, like, what is it that we are able to discern from the data as far as like what is the source of their dissatisfaction, or do they not have dissatisfaction at all, and they're just like, hey, it'd be cool if you added this feature. Like, those are all different things.
Beautiful.
Rock and roll.
All right.
Well, with that, then I think do we have one more?
We do.
Awesome.
All right. So this last one here is a marketplace. So switching it up from the B2B SaaS, their target customer is college students who need tutoring in STEM subjects. They have an MVP in progress. So they're connecting students with tutors, mostly grad students and TAs. And everyone's super pumped about it in theory. But when it comes to actually paying, students ghost. They'd rather struggle through problem sets for free or beg their friends to help them. Is this just a broke college student problem, or are we missing something about the value prop? Anything else? Components of it. They've built a decent MVP. They've got 80 students signed up and 25 tutors. Tutors want $25 to $40 an hour, which is fair. Students keep asking if there's a free tier, if they can just try one session to see if it's worth it. Starting to think students only pay for tutoring when their parents are footing the bill. Whew, there's a lot of assumptions there. But yeah, I mean, I guess like the first thought was like, are we getting students that are already looking for tutoring, or like, if they're just like, oh, I can get a free tutoring session, then like maybe that would be worth it to them. But like, are they already like actively engaging in the process of being tutored, and they're currently not able to find the right fit or something of that sort? And so when we think about trying to make the connection between them, it's not only that they're like looking for tutoring, but like what's the gap and problem in that identification of tutoring? Because there's obviously like tutoring centers on a campus and things of that nature. And so what's the fundamental problem that they're not getting in terms of this connection point? Is it there's not enough offerings, or the tutors that they would have access to on a campus aren't the right fit, whether that's from a class standpoint, or maybe they don't have the right hours or offerings? So that would be kind of where I would focus, is like, who exactly is that that's needing this particular support? In terms of the, I don't think it's necessarily a broke college student problem. I think it's not identifying what the kind of connection point of these tutors and the students are. So I don't think we've, outside of, yeah, they want tutoring, what's the problem they're having with the other ways of finding tutoring? So I'll pass it to you, JDM, and see what other thoughts you have.
I agree. I came at it from a different perspective, but actually landed in the same spot. So fundamentally, we agree, but just for another thought process here. So the actual question that you asked was the part that was interesting to me. So you said, is this just a broke college student problem, or are we missing something about the value prop? And my gut says it's actually neither of those things. What it actually is that you don't have a severe problem with a willing buyer. right? We don't have a severe and urgent problem with a willing buyer, or we don't have the right solution to that problem. And the rest of it is like that's just a fact thing. Doesn't have to do with the money. It doesn't have to do with how you articulate a value proposition or even being the right value proposition. It's just not an important enough problem for them to solve, or it's not being solved in the way that they want it to be solved. And we can elaborate on that a little bit, because college students pay for things all the time. They just do. And so they're not paying for this. And the question is why? Why is this lower on their list of priorities of other things to pay for? There could be a legitimate reason for that. If a college student is literally paying exclusively for food and that's it, then obviously this is lower on their list than food, right? But it's not going to be. And so why is this lower on their list than other things that they're paying for, going out to eat with their friends, Netflix, beer, right? What is it that they're paying for that's not this? The second thing is when it comes to the right solution part, I think this is where this is also important as well, is that just because that they have the problem and they'd like to do better and they know that they need help doesn't mean they want a tutor. So what would it look like, for example, to change the value creation mechanism from a person who's a tutor to AI? Like if you were just to swap this with an AI chatbot that they could start using right away, then that would be something. I'm not suggesting that you do this. I don't know anything about your space, but I'm saying, if you were to change that value creation mechanism, would that change the conversion? Would that lower the lift? Would that lower the switching cost? Would that lower the psychological barrier? Would it make it easier for them to engage with that? Could that also lower the cost to increase your conversion rates to that as well? Could you then also choose to do a free tier because you don't have to pay a person $25 to $40 an hour in order to let them get a taste for it? You can have them 1 session for free, or 7 days for free, or something like that before they actually sign up, or even some type of free tier. Not a fan of free tiers, but you can do that. And all of that is unlocked because we changed the value creation mechanism. And I'm not saying that that's the right mechanism, or even that you necessarily need to, but this is where we often talk about the strong difference between we have an urgent problem with a willing buyer and we have the right solution to that problem. Those are two different things. And so I just want to call out that when you say, is it broke college student problem or are we missing something about the value prop? It's probably not either of those things. And that list includes a couple of other things as well, that it's either just not a severe and urgent problem or it's not the right solution to that problem. So just want to throw that out there.
Did anyone
catch
it?
Well, I think we had some questions in the chat I saw here on LinkedIn. Let's throw up JP Morgan's.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, we were both trying to MC.
Hands off the keyboard.
All
right. Do you see VC investing in hardware companies? I know SaaS is king, but curious of your vantage point. Yeah, all the time. Absolutely, VCs invest in hardware all the time. But there's a lot of VCs who don't. And so there's a lot more VCs who will turn down hardware than there are VCs who will turn down SaaS. And that has to do with the risk profiles of the companies, the expertise needed in some of those, the relationships that they establish, and all kinds of other things that contribute to the success of the portfolio. So, but there are VCs who invest in hardware all day long. It's just, it's usually going to be part of their thesis. There's not a lot of them who will invest in hardware absent being central to their thesis, again, because the risk profile is so different. So that's one thing that I see there. And then there's other categories that kind of fit into that as well. So then you could talk about CPG, which kind of is the same thing. You'll get a bit more of a crossover, I think, between the SaaS and the CPG than you will get to SaaS and hardware, because a lot of the SaaS guys have been burned in the hardware space before, again, because that risk profile is so different, even though it does share some overlaps with CPG. But again, you're gonna really target the VCs who have a focus in CPG at that point as well. Oh, sorry, a lot of you may not know CPG. That's consumer packaged goods. So those are the things that you make and put on shelves, and people buy, consumers usually. So consumer packaged goods, just little gizmos.
Perfect. Yeah, I don't have a ton else to add. I mean, there's definitely, I think the big thing I would highlight is usually having the expertise to invest in that space is a determination of that. So people invest usually in what they know. And I think we've had more companies kind of growing in the traditional B2B SaaS. And so that's where you see them investing in kind of what they know. And there's more experts to support in that process. And I think I just looked it up. There's about 20% of investments go into hardware companies. So one, there's a smaller set of capital. So if you are in that process of, as a founder starting this space, there's less capital for a more capital intensive type of venture. So just thinking of that component of it. And then, but there has been a recent, I would say, tick up in terms of hardware that's like around the enablement of AI infrastructure. So, I think a lot of people are getting burned on just like the AI enabled platform approach of B2B SaaS, since everyone's doing AI. And so it's kind of going back to some of the, picks and shovels, are like, what's the infrastructure that's going to enable some of this technology to grow going forward. And so I think that's where you'll see from a hardware lens, some of that investment going. So, but I think it's a good question, and the, risk threshold is certainly different in terms of, desirability, viability, and the feasibility, just because like the mechanics of that model of a business is so different, just from pure cost to all of those things, and like who is the actual customer and all of that good stuff. So a lot of different decision-making process that has to go through there.
Cool. Well, that's all of the submitted questions. We did answer more of them on Substack earlier in the week, although hopefully I'm not jumping anything here. We're not? Okay, cool. Awesome. So we are going to be, for now at least, discontinuing our Substack office hours. It was there's a lot of history and things here. For those of you who haven't tried to join our Substack offices, we've had some adventures on the technology side. It's a little bit harder for us to make work well at scale, and that'll change. Substack's improving all the time, but we have that problem, and because of the mechanics of it, it's a lot easier for people to jump onto YouTube and LinkedIn than it is to jump onto Substack for those. And so for that reason, we're going to be discontinuing that. We're still going to be doing Fridays on YouTube and LinkedIn here at noon. But that's what we're going to be doing. I think it was, like if we were to draw an intersection of like desirability, viability, and feasibility, I think it was we definitely had some some feasibility problems in there, but also there was some desirability problems as well. Like the market is just not with us in the same way that you guys are awesome on YouTube and LinkedIn. So. Anyway, so the reason I said that was that we'll have a probably a larger cache of questions going forward on Fridays, because we won't answering any of them on Tuesdays anymore. So that's great. For you anyway, because we'll be answering those here. But anyway, if you've got time for one last question, throw it into the chat. It does on LinkedIn take about 60 seconds for my words to reach you, and then you have to type and then reach them back. So we'll vamp for a minute. Whereas on YouTube, it's much closer to instant. So get those questions in. We'll do that. But while we're waiting, why don't we poke at a little bit Jonathan's question. I know you guys have been going back and forth in the chat here, but I think the 30,000 foot view of it is like Jonathan's asking about, and so there's not like one comment. We can maybe pull up the first one or something like that, just so we have a reference point here. But I think the question was basically, can you show us what a customer interview looks like in the flesh? And I think that would be difficult to do live on the live stream here, because well, that having been said, we can certainly do, if we wanted to do it as a hot seat, then we can do that in a role play format, which I think works really well to give you a realistic look at what those interviews are like, and how they will engage for you by us playing the role of one of your customers and having you do that interview of us, and then we can model it vice versa. But if it's something that you'd be interested in, then we can also have just Cameron and I come up with something that we want to interview people on, and then he and I can do it in real time on the air next week or something like that as well, if you want to do that. So let us know. I really appreciate the suggestion. That's why we're asking, like, how can we add value to you guys? So thanks for that, and let us know if there's a direction there you want to go, and we're happy to help. So Cameron, next week, kind of a big deal.
Yeah, we got Global Entrepreneurship Week coming your way. So starting on Monday, we kickstart with a whole set of events and activities. So we'll be diving in Monday with, I think, one of the main ones. If you are looking to access grant funding, highly recommend plugging into the morning session with Ben Cadranel on SBIR STTR. So learn a little bit about that funding process and how you can tap into federal funds and those that are still available in our current landscape. Additionally, we will conclude the day with our what we're calling, it's our 7th annual Sacramento Entrepreneurial State of the Union. So it's a great discussion about what's going on in the ecosystem. So we'll have Victor Huang, who will come in and talk about entrepreneurship and the power it has in bringing our nation together. We also then have 2 impactful panels. So one will be led by Monique Brown on what innovation in the health and life sciences looks like and the assets we have going on in our ecosystem. I'm excited to also have a conversation with JP and Sadie around the work that's being done on the regional hub for AI and advancing infrastructure, workforce development, and startups around that. So super pumped for that conversation. And then, throughout the week, one of the busiest days is Wednesday, which is kickstarts with 1 million cups. So we have 2 teams pitching during that week, or I guess during that day. They'll get some feedback and Q&A, and then we'll head straight into the mentor sprint. So rapid feedback sessions from mentors and advisors. And if you want to hop on to the Traction Lab podcast live, you can join JDM and me for that session. Get your voice on the pod, but also mainly get your questions answered and work through some things. And then we'll be concluding the day with NorCal AngelCon, which is where we have 4 companies competing for $100K and part equity, part non-dilutive, and just an awesome event to see the talented innovators, entrepreneurs in our ecosystem. So plug into that, check out all the events in the link that I shared, but hope to see you about the ecosystem and just celebrate the role entrepreneurship plays in our community.
Well, that is awesome indeed. Thanks for sharing all that. I know you put that link in the LinkedIn chat. I will drop that into the YouTube chat in just a second as well. I was trying to hunt it down. It won't let me copy it from the stupid little chat thing on Restream. So I'll do that in a minute. But yeah, check that out. And it's a lot of cool stuff, particularly Wednesday, as Cameron shared that whole day. That's going to be a jam-packed day, basically from 8:30 to from 8 in the morning to 8 at night or something like that. It's a whole fun day of entrepreneurship. So hope to see you all there. I will be there, rocking and rolling and wheeling and dealing and cheering startups on. So and crushing dreams, probably, because I heard something about a mentor sprint in there. So cool. We did not get another live chat, or another live question in the chat, rather. So I think we'll maybe land the plane here a few minutes early as we begin our final descent into oblivion. Several jokes came to mind when I said that, and I've decided not to say any of them. But yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us. We're going to be back here every single Friday, noon Pacific, YouTube and LinkedIn. So check it out. If you got a question that you want to ask a bit more substantively, you can always submit them in advance, jdm.bio. Hit the calendar thing. There's a link to fill out a little Google form. You can throw a question at us that way so you can have a little bit more space. Otherwise, of course, ask your questions live. We love it. We love your perspectives. If you've got thoughts or comments or ideas or suggestions on any of the questions, throw those in the chat. As you know, we will throw those up on screen as well. But this is all about you guys. Cameron and I can have fun off camera. So this is just about how can we add value to you guys. So thanks for joining us, and it's always great to hang out with you, Cameron.
Likewise. Well, we appreciate you all plugging in, and we look forward to seeing you at Global Entrepreneurship Week next week, and we'll be again live next Friday. So plug on in.
Oh.